this is Daryl.
And I'm John.
And this is the Town of Orphaned Characters, our weekly podcast where we check in on our town and roll up a new character each week. We welcome you to come and join us and to possibly take the characters out on trips and adopt them.
Yeah, adopt these characters. They're intended to be adoptables.
Yes, we love each and every one of them, but we also want to share that love with you. Last week, we made Jahzzar, the Spine Snapper, a orc warlock who he is pretty beefy and really interesting.
Jahzzar is a badass. Yes, I'm just saying.
He doesn't care about, looking shameful and like that. Very strong-willed, a little disturbed in the head.
Yeah.
But, all around seems like a very fun character. Neutral evil.
Yeah, that was the thing that stuck out to me with Jahzzar was the alignment is different than we have a lawful evil character, but this is a neutral evil character, and there's a lot more wiggle room with that.
Yeah, there is, and I really think Jahzzar came into the town at the end of the episode, probably on like a migration path or something like that, and had just saw the weird hodgepodge, like non-human people growing in this town. Is like, I left my tribe, or my tribe kicked me out, or they're haunted. So could be some kind of monster, something like that. In the past, they came in and like, well, I'm going to build me a house here. And I feel like Jahzzar is not just building a house. Like, we have some huts. We have like a ship.
Yep.
A pirate ship docked. And then we have like this underwater / like in the embankment hobbit hole for Misty going on. And I think Jahzzar is going to build like a brick house or like a wooden, like maybe like a log cabin style.
Yeah. I think Jahzzar's like aesthetic would be fairly rustic, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the kind of dude that's wearing plaid shirts, and just prefers physical hobbies like I don't know, collecting and cutting wood or hunting. I almost wanted to throw out there that maybe Jahzzar at first is just kind of has more of a just passing through kind of attitude.
Yeah,
and I think that's the kind of thing that you could play. You just play it by ear if you decide to adopt the character. Like, how is he going to approach life?
Yeah.
Does he even bother to pitch a tent?
Yeah. He's kind of, he's on his way through, and the background is a haunted one. So yeah, probably just a passing through and probably settles in.
Right. Yeah. Kind of on the run.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something special about our community that keeps him around just a little bit longer than other places. Yeah,
maybe he sees that he can fit in a little bit better. I bet you I know, he runs into Sophia. Sophia's going to be like the linchpin of our little thing. Like, you meet this strange goblin who has just that aesthetic that throws you off, and she breaks kind of like the hesitation that they have for stopping and whatnot. So like, maybe Jahzzar comes by through a couple times, passing through, and sees the town growing and like new houses in the area, and it's just like, well, I'll give it a try. Like,
maybe, yeah.
And then he like meets Red Sorosa, and like Red's just like, settle down, fool! Like, quit wandering. Gives him that old man advice and really passes it on and like builds that community. He probably still is very self-centered.
Yeah, I think he might also be the type of person that would struggle with trusting others because he's so self-centered.
And the past,
and maybe comes from a past that involves many people that like that, and just like a haunted past, like
and his transition
that they have a hard time accepting that other people can be trusted.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd be interested in seeing what would happen, and I bet you like he feels like he would be one to sit back and just laugh at the shenanigans that happened between Misty and Celia as they like banter and like have these like water feuds and like so like he would do that kind of stuff. I'd be very interested in hearing about the skills that you think some of these characters have. Speaking of these things, because like Jaruk, maybe most orcs are probably seen as making huts, yurts, large tent style encampments, probably in most campaigns. I feel that they would be more woodsmen.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it too.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like orcs, when they are settling into an area that they're not going and raiding and what like that, in the most typical fantasy settings, they feel woodsy. They feel timber.
A hunter gatherer or something like that.
Yeah. They feel much more like that. Like I would say almost the long cabin,
like a lumberjack.
Yeah, or like the long cabins. I think it's of the I cannot recall which Native American side. I want to say it's Eastern in the Appalachian areas, but I'm not 100% certain. So don't quote me on this, and please pass it. But I do remember that different styles of houses. But there's long wooden styles.
Yeah, I think they call it a longhouse. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I'd have to Google it, and I don't really. Now's not the time to be Googling.
Yeah. No. But yeah, so the longhouses, but I feel like that kind of style of houses where they use the wood to build and construct the houses because it's plentiful in the areas that they're at. And I think that's what he'll bring to the aesthetic of the town. Like he starts bringing that kind of stuff. And possibly he might have a woodsman skill where he can do woodworking and develop that. That'll be interesting.
Oh, yeah. That's some stuff you could throw into the character if you decided to adopt Jaruk.
Please adopt Jaruk.
For just one Patreon subscription a month.
That's all it takes.
You too could sponsor a wayward orc lumberjack. All right, so do we want to check in with the other characters today? Do we feel like we need to speculate about what they might be doing?
No. I think they've kind of settled in, doing their normal daily routines, bantering, growing, laying things out. If we end up running into a character or developing a character that seems like they might
interact in a certain way with other characters,
interact, yeah, we can do that. Or if we get one that kind of seems like they might be, I don't know, social engineering, city engineering style, that we could like describe how they are going to make a road system in the town. We'll talk about that because Lord knows Red Rosa and Sophia are not zoned correctly for that kind of stuff. But jumping in for today, we shall see what we shall make. Let us see. So if this is the first time you've joined us, you probably don't know any of the characters that we've just mentioned, but those are all previous episodes that we've built upon. We begin each time with our race. We use all the races that we have. I think we don't have access to the total package on what I have. So it's an even 30 roll to find out what kind of race we are working with today.
And we're going to roll for race, gender, age, alignment, abilities, class, background, and languages, and some other things too.
Whatever else is required for the character to become fleshed out in the most basic sense.
Okay.
And as tradition dictates, John rolls the D20 on the race, and I roll the D10.
Okay, let me get my box here.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yes.
All right, roll. 13.
7. So we're going down to 20. So let's go down. We have a really, really weird town forming here because today's race that we're working with is lizard folk.
Lizard folk, okay.
Yes.
Tell me about the lizard folk because I don't know. I'm actually not an expert on D&D races beyond like the classic ones.
Yeah. I'm a little touched with it. But basically, lizard folk are different than Dragonborn. Dragonborn are humanoids who have draconic ancestry, or they were magically imbued with draconic ancestry and take on draconic-looking forms, and the dragons of that kind. Lizard folk, on the other hand, are just that, humanoid lizards. They are still cold-blooded, somewhat, if I remember correctly. They are they come from a cold-blooded ancestry. They have a very different way of thinking. They try to understand people, but it's really difficult because they think and act much more different than warm-blooded creatures. They experience limited emotional life. A lot of their impulses and their feelings revolve around fear, aggression, and pleasure. So they view things as like, oh, that thing's bigger than me. I don't want to get hurt. I'm going to respect that. Like, they try to avoid those things. They don't really fear, but they like have a healthy respect for things that are bigger than them and like try to act accordingly.
I see.
Yeah, and they kind of have a posturing. If you've read Goblin Slayer, the lizard shaman in that is similar to that. If you've watched or read Beasters,
I have not.
That's another case where it kind of shows the animal-esque of it. So they're much more preserved or reserved and like cold in that emotional state.
It sounds like they sort of don't really just get the more mammalian humanoid races.
Yeah.
On this, they're like, you know what I mean? Like
they try, but it's difficult, you know?
Yeah.
A big difference in culture and principal thinking processes, right? Like,
yeah.
When you run into, or if you're going to, I don't know, say fight like an ogre, and you're like, oh God, I'm going to die. Like, that's scary. The lizard folk are like, it's bigger than me. It's dangerous. I need to act accordingly. Like, they don't get that same adrenaline pumping system, right?
They're less emotional. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they almost have us, like, I'm trying to create pull up an analog in my mind of something else I've seen in media or in literature. And I'm just thinking of like an alien.
Kind of, yeah.
And I almost want to think of like, if you remember the Andalite from Animorphs, how he didn't quite understand the silly human customs.
Yeah.
You could play it like that. I mean, I think some of this is up to interpretation, right? But I'm just getting
Yeah. So you really want to think of it when we're building this character. We really need to think that this is a character that is very practical, is very, at least in thinking processes and how they take in information and interact in the world around them. Like, a lot of people make the joke of lizard folk adventurers in a party watching another character die and going, hey, look, free food. Because they don't associate the body or the meat with the person that it was. When something's dead, they view it as
it's just dead meat. Yeah.
It's just dead meat and it can be used. They don't hold on to that sentimental.
Very practical.
Yeah, very practical. So
I'm also kind of like, what's the dude from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Drax.
I'm getting a bit of a Drax vibe from it.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. That kind of Drax or Mantis kind of outlook to it. Mantis is a little bit more emotional for it, but yeah. So kind of that Drax detached, oddball situation there. They do have a natural bite weapon that they can do. They have the cunning artisan ability. As part of a short rest, they can harvest bone and hide from a slain beast, construct, dragon, monstrosity, or plant creature. And they can create an item, a shield, a club, a javelin, some darts, and some appropriate tools to do that with. But that's over an hour. Like, they can make a weapon or a shield in an hour.
That's kind of cool. That's some utility right there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. They can hold their breath for up to 15 minutes at a time. But that's also, you have to remember that in D&D, there's also a modification that shows, not modification, but a rule for holding your breath, which is based on the Constitution. So they innately can hold their breath for about 15 minutes, but it could be longer.
Okay, I see. So minimum 15 minutes.
Minimum 15 minutes.
If they have a higher constitution, then they can hold it for longer. Okay.
And we get down to our first secondary role of the night, or of the day for me. Hunter's Lore. The lizard folk gain proficiency in 2 of the following skills: animal handling, nature, perception, and survival. So we each roll a d6. 6 is a reroll, and we'll see what skills we get. Sound good?
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Hold on a second.
No problem.
Oh, there we go. Rolled a 2.
I rolled a 1. So animal handling and nature.
Okay. Interesting.
That seems about right for an adventuring lizard folk. You know, the last 3 bits about this character that you need to know about as far as just his race coming in. He has natural armor, so that means his armor class, which is how hard it is to hit or wound this character, is 13 plus his dexterity modifier. And we can still apply a shield benefit to it. Armor that has higher armor class than 13, apply it over it, so you don't get to add to it. It's one or the other. But
right, but basically means you don't need light armor. You can just be unarmored.
Yeah, pretty much. If our lizard folk becomes a spellcaster, a wizard, then he doesn't need to worry about having mage armor because he's already naturally armored. So that's a really good benefit to have. And then also he has hungry jaws. In battle, you can throw yourself into a vicious feeding frenzy. You make a special attack action with his bite as a bonus action. If it hits, you gain temporary hit points equal to your constitution modifier, along with dealing the damage. And you can't use this trait again until you finish a long or short rest. He can also speak and write and read Common and Draconic.
The Hungry Jaws thing is really interesting to me, and it just evokes, what is that character from Final Fantasy IX with the fork?
Ooh.
I don't remember her name. It doesn't matter. I
didn't play a lot of 9, so I can't help you.
Yeah, I just think what I'm thinking is it would be hilarious to have a character that was built around eating.
Just being hungry all the time? Yeah.
Eating the opponents in combat. That would be funny.
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. If we get a barbarian, that would be a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because they do have a natural weapon of biting, which is a strength-based attack. So could work right there.
It is by far the dumbest idea for a character I've had for this podcast. like dumb as in well, that's just silly.
Yeah.
And unsophisticated.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
We can be as crass and unsophisticated as we want to be. We do. So I'm going to save. We have a special lizard folk personality quirk table that we can roll on too. And we'll roll on that when we get down to personalities. But I love when we get these special monstrous creature personality quirks going on. It just adds a little bit more flavor to this stew that we call character creation.
Yeah.
Moving along, we are going to do our gender reveal. And for those of you who don't know, when we do the gender, we have a very simple 6-step process. This isn't necessarily the most inclusive way, but it's definitely the most consistently and practical one that we can use. So 1 on the D6 is agender. Moving up through the things to 6 at fluid. The middle 3 and 4 is male and female, and on the other side of that is feminine presents as masculine and masculine presents as feminine. So, John, this time, would you do the honors of rolling the D6? You have the nice box sound, so.
Yeah. All right, I'll roll the D6. And 4.
4? Well, that is female.
I think that's female.
It is
female lizard folk.
That's going to be interesting. And that seems about right, for our town. We have 2 males and about 5 females. So that's
why not?
Yeah, it seems good.
I think our we have kind of, it's like, what am I trying to say? The method we've come up with for rolling the gender has led us to a certain interesting mix or diversity.
Yeah, it really has.
You know what I mean?
I was really hoping for a fluid one this time. I'm not gonna lie. I was really hoping for because it would just it's even more complexity onto the lizard folk.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That or even a gender would have been another thing that I thought would have been really interesting. So while we've tried to create a system that is inclusive and leads to a certain amount of randomness, I would say if you adopt the character, do what you want.
Yeah. And I think something that we'll look at in the future is adding a little bit more of a spread, because there is that like the average on a D6 is 3 and 4, most common presentations. But I do think like having the fluidity coupled with the alien mind of the lizard folk, the reptilian mind, would have been really nice, because it keeps questioning the social structures of these mammalian humanoids that she's going to be living with now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could explore, and if you're a writer, it's a very interesting space, because like I'm thinking about how snakes reproduce.
Yeah,
and I mean, we'll just to not get into too much detail, but I would imagine that a lizard race would not have the same concepts of coupling that mammal races would. So, or like, marriage and all that stuff could become totally alien to them. They'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
I've got my clutch has 15 fathers.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah, or they're like, why would you? Like, because there are some reptiles that do things like that, but
or like Futurama, where he meets the mermaid and she's like, "I lay my eggs and you do the business, you do your thing." And he's like,
this doesn't work out the way I thought it did.
This doesn't work the way I thought it did."
On the same token, though, like I can imagine because she's female, the alligator style, like the females like takes care of the eggs and lets them nest and whatnot like that, but also like is super protective, like, and then maybe she isn't that way with just her clutch, but like when she has a group of these thin-skinned, soft people, and is in a party with them, like super aggressively defensive of them, like the mama alligator style. Like instead of mama bear, it's mama alligator, and she is gonna chomp your ass.
It almost depends on how the age of the character works out, because like you could also role play the imprinting idea, lizards imprinting on,
so
and thinking that somebody's her mommy or something silly like that.
That's a great segue, because the next example is the age. It's almost as if you had notes, but no.
Almost.
The lizard folk reach maturity around the age 14 of the human, and they live apparently rarely longer than 60 years. So not a big lifespan, very short-lived, especially compared to humans. Now you have to keep in mind, a lot of these so-called monstrous races are non-traditional races, tend to have lower lifespans or different life expectancies in the books, and like, oh, they barely live longer than 60 years. But that's also because when they're written up and talked about, they are kind of done through the eyes of some really bad scholars like Volo, and maybe they don't live longer than 60 years traditionally in their society because of just the way that it is where they live and things like that. So who knows? But to do this, what we normally do is a D4 and a D6, multiply it, and take that and add it to the base one. And I would roll a D4, but my D4 has apparently run away. Oh no, I found it. It was hiding under my chocolates. So, John, what do you think is going to be? How old do you think our lizard folk?
25. What'd you get? That was my guess, by the way. I didn't roll any dice.
Yeah. 20. 4 times 5. So
okay,
our lizard folk is 34.
Okay. So middle-aged.
Yeah.
Or an adult.
Very much an adult.
She's seen some shit.
Has been around a block or two.
Yeah. I'm going to rule out the whole imprinting thing. Yeah. She's beyond that.
Yeah, totally.
But she might have a more matriarchal or protective mama gator type of personality. We'll see.
And this is an interesting thing too. Whereas with our Cecilia, we rolled up her fish trait. With the lizard folk, we're not going to dictate what descendant or reptilian ancestor that she takes after. So this is up to your interpretation and how you want to make her look. You can go iguana, alligator, I don't know, bitter dragon, however you want to do and design her look. That's up to you. And that can also dictate a little bit about her personality, characteristics, and how she expresses. So
right. Yeah.
Now, while we're here, let us go ahead and do an alignment check, which will just be a D10, and we will go down the list for the alignment very quickly.
All right. I mean, you're both going to roll a D10, correct?
Yep.
Let me find it. Here it is.
You can't hear me shaking my dice. I'm sorry, people.
Yeah, we got to get you a little dice box.
Yeah, but I got a nice table sound, though. So
I rolled a 1.
And I have a 5. So let me pull up my alignment chart here, because I like the traditional 3x3 chart, preferably. Oh, I found the better one, the tempered one. Anyway, instead of neutral, it's tempered. So one would be lawful good, and 5 would be neutral. And I think neutral probably fits the best.
I think it does too. Because we've already discussed this character, the racial personality or racial disposition,
yes,
as just being wired in a way that's totally different to the other races in the game. So I think that makes sense. Neutral.
I like it. And we're going to save the background for later, because we like to do that as we flesh out the actual abilities and the class. But speaking of abilities, we roll 4d6 and take the highest 3. And we just straight run from strength all the way down through charisma. We don't move. We don't change up wherever we want it. Where the dice land, that's where the dice land. So I will start. And I have 4 dice, so I can make this nice dice goblin sound.
Clickety clack.
Clickety clack. Clickety clack. And I'll roll strength. 3 4s, so 12. John, would you do the honors for dexterity?
So the strength is 12. Yeah. Okay. Dex. All right. A 6, a 5, and a 3, and a 2. So that makes it a brain 14?
Yes, 14.
That's pretty good. That's a good starting dex.
Yeah, I like this. Like, stronger than average, pretty buff, and pretty dexterous. Well, I'm glad that there's a racial modifier for Constitution, because I just rolled a 1, 1, 2, and a 5.
Oh no!
Yeah. Oh yeah!
Oh.
So 8.
This is our worst stat rolled so far.
It really is. But luckily, she has a +2 modifier to that, so she's at a 10. But that could have been bad.
Right, you want me to roll intelligence?
Yes. I hope you get a really high intelligence. I want a really weird wizard. That's what I'm hoping for in this character.
With a low constitution, I think that makes sense. Okay. 6, 5, and a 3, and a 1 again. So that's a 14.
Yeah. Okay. Wisdom. Oh, 6, 5, 4, and 1. So 15.
Okay, we definitely have a mage of some kind here.
A mage or a ranger?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, charisma.
All right, hold on. That's going to be a 12. 5, 5, 2, and a 2.
Nice. Okay. So looking at it across the board, the total scores are 12 in strength, 14 in dex, 10 in constitution, 14 in intelligence, 16 in wisdom, and 12 in charisma. So a pretty average and good spread as far as I like just general ability scores for a adventurer. Like above average in most things, a little bit higher in a few spots. That leads us a little bit more into a dex-based attack style a character with high intelligence or higher intelligence and wisdom scores.
Mm-hmm.
So something like ranger, maybe monk, maybe.
Yeah, I think monk would be sweet.
That would be really interesting, like a lizard folk monastery. That would be super interesting.
Desert dwelling, the airbender type of character almost.
Or like a waterbend, like the swamp benders, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really cool.
That would be rad.
Yeah. And like so you have to remember that the lizard folk also have a tail typically. So imagine like your normal kung fu movie, and when the person does like the leg sweep and that you normally call it like the dragon tail or whatever, they actually have a tail to do that with. So
right, yeah,
that just adds an extra like. So you're doing your kung fu, your strikes, and suddenly your bonus attack action, tail slap right across the face, like.
Yeah. Right. So I'm almost tempted. Like if I were the DM, I'm not saying that we're going to do this on the character sheet, but if I were the DM, I'd be like, you know what? You can replace that bite attack with a tail attack.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to. And instead of having the bite, you could do a 1d6.
Yeah. Do the same thing.
Strength mod with, and instead of bludgeoning, because I think this says it's like piercing damage.
Yeah, it's piercing damage instead of bludgeoning, normal for unarmed attacks. Yeah.
Or whatever. But I would make it like it's going to be bludgeoning this time because it's a tail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that, I think, talk to your DM. I think that's a great idea. Like if you don't feel like biting, because I mean, there's a lot of things in D&D that you don't want to put in your mouth. A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Totally.
So we kind of have a feel of where we want this character to be. We feel more inclined for a ranger or a druid. Not druid, a ranger or a monk. Druid is a possibility. Wizard isn't bad, but not the best. Like it would still be a decent one, depending on what kind of spells we went with. But now it is time to see what the class is, and to do this, we both roll a d12, and we debate the two numbers that we get. For those at home who have been following us, they know that we do this so that we don't have to get stuck with like druid, or monk, or paladin, because the D12s average in the middle a lot, so this gives us more variance. Yeah. And we're all about that variance.
Well, we hope it does. So that one time that we had one character, it was barred on both dice.
First off, if you go back and listen to that one, we talk about the Simic hybrid before we roll it. It. We talk about being a pirate and a bard before we roll it, and we roll it. And like
it's kind of weird, actually. It's weird how that happened.
We called that episode like point by point most of the time throughout, and it was really strange. Like Celia knew what she was about before we did, and she was going to have it. Right. So
the character was alive before she was on paper,
pretty much. So let us roll. I have a 6.
I have a 3.
Okay, so you have a cleric. I have a monk.
It's no contest, man. It's got to be a monk.
It's got to be a monk.
And again, how did we call it? Like we did mention some other classes, but we spent the most time talking about monk.
Yeah. So I
Dragon Tail it is.
Dragon Tail it is. So first off, we get to choose 3 abilities. 1, 2. So we have 2 monk skills and a lot of musical instruments are artisan tools. So let's do the skills first. Just roll a d6, and And then I'll count up the.
Okay.
I have a 2.
That's a 1.
So acrobatics and athletics. Now, holy.
That works.
1, 2, 3. Screw it. Roll me a d20.
Okay.
I'll count what I have to count.
Oh, that's a 2.
Oh, that's easy. Bagpipes.
No. Okay. That's bonus points to anybody who can pull off a Scottish lizard folk.
That
lady.
And can you just imagine? Because I'm going to go back up here and look at the picture of the lizard folk. Do they have lips? Kind of.
Oh man.
Like
maybe she puffs her cheeks like a frog.
Ooh.
I don't know.
That could be interesting.
And that's how she's able to get air into the bagpipes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they look like they can have lips. They kind of have like curl there.
Yeah, I think this goes into like how are you going to interpret what the race looks like?
Yeah.
I personally was picturing like an Argonian, and they do kind of have lips, but they're very snake-like.
Yeah.
And so now I'm not so sure about that.
It really depends on your interpretations, but I would love to see what you think a lizard folk's bagpipe style thing. It could be anything, and it'd be very interesting to see what kind of style is like. Because they might have something that we would call bagpipes, but they use it in a different way. They have a different type of structure for the mouth. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like a side thing that they put into the side of the mouth because they have longer jaws. Who knows? So it's a very interesting thing. It could be very alien and could be very different. Maybe in your world, bagpipes aren't common, and this is a lizard folk thing. So
maybe it involves physically expanding an air sac in the side of their mouth or something too, like a frog.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more like, it sounds like a bagpipe, but it is her throat. Talk to your DM because honestly, the DM might be like, no, it's got to be a physical
tool
object. It has to be a physical tool because you could be separated from it kind of thing.
Yeah. And we have 2 other things. You get unarmored defense, which we already kind of had, which is your AC equals 10 plus your dexterity modifier and wisdom modifier. I mean, you can't use a shield for that one. And you also get martial arts, which just lets you do strength, dexterity instead of strength. Change your unarmed strike damage or monk weapon damage to a D4 if you want. If it's better or whatnot, and it changes as you go on, and you can get some benefits. An interesting idea for Into the Future would be what kind of tradition would this character follow? Because there's a decent number of traditions that she could go into or she could be studying for. These traditions, not necessarily like they just discover it, but this is like the tradition that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
We could roll this now, kind of like how we did with Red Sora, and kind of dictate what his path was or what he was kind of walking towards. And you can always change this later if you adopt this character and play it out up to 3rd level. But we have 6 options. Would you care to go ahead and roll a d6?
Sure.
Okay.
That's a 6.
The Way of the Sun Soul. That's really interesting.
Okay.
The Sun Soul is, think Dragon Ball Z. They use the key to shoot blasts of energy and like Kamehamehas out at a range ability.
Okay.
Which is really cool. So like they can they can shoot key blasts essentially. So that's kind of where this character is working their way up to. They're not there yet. They can't do that yet, but that might be something in the future that they go towards, which is interesting because it's a lizard folk and they're following a tradition of like sun and warm.
That's kind of flavorful, right? Like, the sun probably, if you were going to be creating a background for this character or like an origin story, the sun would be important to any species or race that relies on it more than for heat and warmth and like energy.
Yeah.
Because reptiles need to bask in the sun to warm their blood.
Yeah. And so very much traditionally, like historically, that would be a very big, maybe the lizard folk might have a religion or a cult. Because I don't know if a religion is a good term for something that the lizard folk would follow, considering how calculating and practical the mind is, or the way of thinking and alien, how detached, because religion requires a lot of devotion and faith into it. And I think cult are a monastery tradition is a better way of describing it. So I think that's really good. And in your DM's world, you might want to check and see if they already have a set culture or background in mind. Maybe they don't. Maybe you can take that and run with it. In our case, this character she's going to be kind of the focal point. And I say that traditionally, the lizard folk have a structure and philosophy revolving around sun and the practicality of it inside themselves. So,
right. It is an energy source and it is respected and important for that reason.
Yes. Yeah. And it drives everything inside you, but it's not a fanatical or emotional response to this religion.
No, it's not a god with like an embodiment the way that, I'd say it's more like very ancient cultures here on Earth where they, it's like
they revered it.
Yeah, they revere it. Maybe they have some superstitious beliefs, but not like there's not a sun god so much as like the sun is the source of life.
Yeah. And we have that in ourselves because and if you channel it and learn how to focus yourself, you can access the sun's great power.
Right.
So now we're moving on to our background, and we took out the Magic the Gathering backgrounds because they don't always make sense in most settings and in most high fantasy style world.
They kind of require a lot of Magic the Gathering focused storyboard. I should say world building is what I should say.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Or it needs a lot of tweaking to make the things work. So like there might be a Galgori, which is an undercity rot. Life comes from death. Death comes from life philosophy, but social implications of it. So there's a lot of explaining to do. If you want to, feel free to use it. We don't use it in our things. So that leaves us with 17 possible backgrounds.
Although I would say, even though we're not going to use it, that this character is very Boros.
Very Boros, very Galgori.
Could be Golgari too, yes. The sun thing is what makes me think of Boros.
Yeah, but the neutrality makes me think Galgori. So
that's true. Yeah. All right, moving on.
Sidetrack. So we're going to switch over, and we have 17 options. John typically rolls this because he cannot see the options that he rolls, and I get to see and laugh. And so
right. John, and I'll just roll a d20, and then we'll throw out the top three if we happen to roll a 18, 19, or 20.
Yep.
All right. So. And I rolled a 20, so I need to re-roll that.
Yep.
But it's a waste of a natural 20, if you ask me.
Yeah, kind of.
All right. That's a 14.
Sweet.
You're kind of making a face like you don't want it to be this option. So I'm curious, what is it?
Sage.
What is it? Sage.
It's not that I don't want this option. It's that I am processing this option. So the Sage has spent years learning the lore of the multiverse, scouring manuscripts, studying scrolls, listening to great experts on subjects of interest. They are a master of the study. This is somebody who went to college. This is a a PhD level background, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And lizard folk are very practical and very different minded. So it's a very juxtaposed. It fits with the monk.
Yeah. So I'm almost taking like less of a philosopher and less of a less of a philosopher and more of a chemist, or somebody who's very much into the practical, scientific aspects of it. And think of how many people that you've met that are into sciences, physics, and chemistry, the math brain stuff, who actually fit this sort of description of somebody who's practical and not very emotional in their daily life. I personally know several. I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to call anybody out, but
and it's not bad.
I personally know several. Yeah, I adore all of those people.
I think so. We naturally get Arcana and History as skills proficiencies, and then we get to roll up a language. But I'm thinking, I'm thinking more of maybe the field of study for this one was weather. And like the the actual reasonings for like weather and patterns and biomes, like
or light sciences, like using mirrors, using wavelengths of light. Because of their interest in reverence for the sun, they are totally all about breaking the light down into a spectrum and figuring out all of that stuff.
Like this is, I feel like this character probably was studying something like that, like practicalities of light and things like that. Let's see what kind of languages we roll up to, because that might also dictate what they were into and studying. So there are 26 possible languages, if I remember counting correctly. And I feel like there's more in here now, but okay. Nope, 26. Okay, so I roll a d6, you roll a d20. Oh, no, we both roll a d20 and a d6, and we'll each choose
a d20 and a d6?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you happen to roll a 1 and a 1, then we have to decide. So
I rolled a 4 and a 4.
So 8. And I got 19. So let's do the 8 first. Gith. Okay. And 19. So Gith and Primordial. So our lizard folk speaks Common, Draconic, Gith, and Primordial.
They're just college electives.
Yeah. Oh, man. And
basically.
And they're proficient in acrobatics, athletics, history, arcana, and nature and animal handling.
I love this. I love this character, and her stats are amazing.
Yeah.
It's a monk with a high dex and high wisdom and high intelligence. She strikes me as a very analytical mind in combat.
Yeah.
Very, very strategic. The type of tactician who is going to know exactly where to hit you in a way that debilitates you for life, possibly. Yeah. Like hitting pressure points and like chi points or whatever they call them.
So think Sherlock Holmes fighting from the Benedict Cumberbatch style, like where he's like, first I dislocate his jaw and then I hit him in the ear to sleep, like that. That's
exactly.
That's the combat style that was seen. And then like, oh, by the way, I just blast him in the face and like continue on with this next person here.
Right. Yeah.
But with this background, we get to do our quirk and our suggested characteristics. Granted, you also have the researcher feature, which means that if this listed folk happens to go into a library or a university or somewhere else, they can find the knowledge that they seek pretty easily. They know some famous people. So should we roll the lizard folk quirk first to see what her quirk is, like what makes her a little bit different? Or should we
let's do it? That sounds like fun. No, it sounds fun.
Roll a D8. Roll a D8. I can't wait to do this.
It's a 1.
You hate waste and see no reason not to scavenge fallen enemies. Fingers are tasty and portable. Finger food.
I love it, man. That is so weird.
I like this because of the simple fact that like, oh, by the way, fingers are food. It's finger food.
Yeah.
But also like she's a practical like field researcher probably. And it's just like, oh, we're going low on supplies. I killed this thing because it attacked me. I'm going to eat the finger now. It's good meat. Like
she is not dainty.
No,
she's not. I mean, I wouldn't say, that doesn't mean she's a slob. I'm just saying she's not squeamish about.
No.
You know,
anything
dissecting her enemy for the purpose of nourishment.
Yeah. And also for the fact like she probably does it in the same way as like somebody giving things like, oh, you attacked me. I hold you no ill will, but now I'm hungry and you're meat now. So I'm going to eat you.
Yeah. And also, I know exactly which hunk of meat on your body is the precise one that provides the most nourishment. Here, party, enjoy, and like
do not let her cook for the party. Don't.
Yeah, not going to go over well.
John, roll me 2 more D8.
Okay, 2 more D8s.
And for those of you listening at home, I get to sit here and read what John rolls first, and he doesn't get to know, and I get to laugh first. So it's
all I do is get to look at his face in the camera. All right. So
it's a wonderful face, by the way.
You want me to add them together,
no,
or just
2 different?
So the first one is a 3.
A 3. Okay.
And the next one. Let me read you the next one.
Yes, go ahead.
A 7.
Okay. 3. I am used to helping out those who aren't as smart as me, and I'm patiently explaining anything and everything to others.
I love it. Oh my God, I love that. That is so perfect.
Second, the 7. I am horribly, horribly awkward in social situations. Yes.
This character is beautiful.
Oh, I love
this character. You couldn't. Honestly, we could not randomly roll. I think I've said this before, but
I mean,
you could not randomly roll a better character. This character is randomly rolled in a way that seems handcrafted and bespoke.
Yeah,
like
which says a lot about. Let's take this moment to really throw out a thank you to Wizards of the Coast and the editors and the designers when they made 5th edition, and they added some of these, like, because this is part of the background roles. They made a really good system for that, at least. And it really,
oh yeah, absolutely,
really solid. So roll a D6 and let's find out her ideals.
Okay. This is the one that could monkey wrench everything.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, I rolled a 4.
No limits. Nothing should fetter the infinite possibility inherent in all existence.
No, that tracks.
Yep.
That it capstones everything.
Yep. Like, no qualms on limitations, no moral ambiguity. It is what it is. If something's living, you leave it alone. If it's not, you don't care. If, so what if maybe I blew a hole in the wall using a light blast and a high speed or a high tuned mirror. That's not the problem here. Like, but now we know we can do it. That's the important thing.
It's a very practical ideal for a character who we've already established as being very practical minded, and I love it.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
Roll another d6 for the bond. No bond.
Here's the other one that could mess up everything.
I expect you to die.
At this point, like the dice are just have been so kind to us tonight.
They really have.
It's either going to be amazing or it's going to be horrible. So let's hear it. See what it is. It's a 2.
I have an ancient text that holds terrible secrets that must not fall into the wrong hands.
I'm speechless. that fits. It really does. It fits.
It's with all coming up sun right now, man. All coming up sun.
Sagely monk. Yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up sun. I love it.
D6 for the flaw.
D6 for the flaw. You're right. This is going to be the one that just be something silly like I'm scared of reptiles or. All right, it's a 6.
I can't keep a secret to save my life or anyone else's.
Oh. Okay, so let's talk about that. Because she's socially awkward.
Yes.
In a way that she's probably not aware of, right? Mm-hmm. She's making everybody else in the room uncomfortable or feel like some cringe.
Yeah.
But she is totally just
fine.
Very Drax-like in her directness and is fine with whatever she's saying. It's the kind of character who maybe just blurts out something like that is totally, I wouldn't say inappropriate, but just an observation that most people would keep to themselves.
Yeah. I feel like some of the more subtle social contracts that the soft-bodied races tend to have, she doesn't abide by them. She doesn't see them because there's a level of emotional, like she goes to a funeral and the widow's crying and she's like, oh, when are you going to cook the body? And everybody's like, don't say that. And she's like,
yeah,
but he's meat now. Why is she crying? She has food for like 3 days. And everybody's just like, don't say that.
Is she upset because he's dead, or is she upset because he's decomposed and no longer delicious?
Yeah. Is she upset because So it's like it's not that she can't keep a secret. It's that a lot of times she probably doesn't register that something is a secret unless explicitly told.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Totally unaware of social cues that would prevent most people from making an observation like, Daryl, the blood has collected in your face veins in such a way that would suggest you are flustered in some aroused in some way. It's just like, what? No, why are you?
Don't say that. Or like,
don't say that.
Or like, they're sitting there and there's the bard in the party trying to like sweet talk the town guard captain. And he's like, oh, we've heard you've been so respectful and like the people love you. And she's just like, but half the guard talk behind his back. Why are you? And like, just like derails. It doesn't always have to be bad. It's just like, it just kind of derails whatever comment. So if you are a type of player who likes to completely throw your DM for a loop and are very spontaneously creative that way, this is a great draw for you. Like you can just break your DM with your straight face, like straight man act and comments like that are just off the wall, but like completely normal and serious. So I think that's
I love it. I think that plays into all the other things we've talked about with this character, and I could see her like just I don't know, like a situation where they're trying to like you said, bribe their way past a guard, and or maybe convince somebody of something that's not true.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, you really should go check on the guards on the other side of the tower. I think they're sick. And she would then turn and look at the guy and say something like, "No, they're not sick. They're dead. We killed them."
Yeah.
And their fingers were delicious.
She's like, she just touched him and goes, "Are you calling us an illness? Because we killed them." like
their fingers did not taste diseased to me. Like
she's munching on an ear going, "What do you mean they died from an illness? Tastes healthy to me."
Yeah.
So the last thing we needed to do is name this wonderful character. And goodness me, lizard folk they have no distinction between gender names or anything like that. And they use a lot of descriptives and typically take their name from the Draconic language. And they normally do something to describe, like in their society, they describe the person by notable deeds or actions. So from the way that it sounds like, kind of like with Jaruk, who got a title and changed their name from the dead name, the lizard folk don't actually get their names until they reach adulthood or something, and then like they get a descriptive name. So we can randomly generate a name in Draconic. We can use one of the ones here, or we can just randomize. So if you have I know you have a favorite name generator. Does it have Draconic names?
That's what I was looking for, because I looked. It has a lizard folk name generator, but it doesn't follow. It doesn't follow the the conventions you mentioned. And I don't see Draconic names. I see dragon names and dragonkin names.
Yeah. That might work too. But I just randomized on Beyond and got Mishira.
Nishira.
Misira, and that feels.
I like it. Actually, I like that a lot.
Very Draconic. Very
Mishira. M-I-S-H.
No, just
spell it again for me.
M-I-S-I-R-A.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And, if we want to, we can just give it a meaning. What, if we want to kind of describe how she is, maybe something like, I don't know. Let's see.
I think if we're going to go with our own little lore here and sun reverence being a thing, it should be something that relates to the sun. Maybe the meaning is like sunbeam or sun, I don't know, warmed by the sun.
Sunspot. Like in like the spots, like it's probably untranslatable into common, but like kind of like how there's a Japanese word for like forest bathing, and this is a single word for it. It's the spot where you go to sun as a lizard folk, like where the people gather.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot.
And so, like,
I mean, in common, or like the human equivalent would be like naming your child something like Meadow.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
Or like Brook or something, like some nature spot.
Natural sort of like park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay.
Or like a kid's nickname like Emily Sunshine or something like that.
Yeah. It means or sunny.
Yeah.
But it means a place where you go to be warm in the sun.
Yeah. So
I dig that, man. That's pretty clever. So that's ours, right? We're and that's gonna be on the character sheet. But again, all of this is subject to your interpretation if you decide to adopt the character.
Of course, and you can play with that and use it as you see fit.
Right.
And that brings us to the end. Now, as far as housing, we'll talk about next episode. I have a feeling that she probably doesn't really particularly care as long as it's dry. So
yeah, warm, dry, and plentiful access to the sun. I can see her living on somebody else's roof, but we'll talk about it next time.
Red saw out one day, and she's like sunbathing on top of there, like doesn't even care. Like it's just up on there. And a funny thing too is like we don't have to roll up anything about equipment for this character or anything because she's a monk and she already has army defense and stuff. So like she already has her armor, she already has her weapons. She's ready to go.
Yeah, she has zero need. I mean, also being a lizard folk and not having any sort of understanding of the human or humanoid need for clothing. She does not need clothing. She does not have the same physical need that human beings or humanoid beings
other soft
have a need for clothes for. Yeah, because we use those to protect ourselves from the elements.
Yeah, and then socially constructed.
She has no such concept. Yeah, she has no concept of those needs.
Yeah. So, and that's going to be another interesting thing too. We had this talk about the Triton and whether or not a being from elemental things. It gets into like some metaphysical, biological things too.
Right.
How do you mark a female lizard folk?
Right.
How do you distinguish? Is it just the color? Is it her size? Is it something about her headdress? Like, because it's not the clothes, and it's not going to be the like physical capabilities of it necessarily. Well, there's going to be some, but not necessarily anything that's directly. They don't have memory glands. They don't do that.
I was going to say that's something that in science fiction and in fantasy fiction constantly drives me nuts. In one way, in some ways, I understand. Like in the Elder Scrolls or whatever, in video games.
Yeah, you have a shape that you have to do.
You have a body mesh that you have to use for all your characters, and it's easier to just have one.
Yeah.
Or in this case, two, one for each, for male and one for female, for each body type. Yeah. But it drives me nuts to see or to read a story or something, a description of or Star Trek is a better example, or Star Wars. Aliens that have, or Mass Effect, they have no physical need for that type of physiology.
Yeah.
Mammary glands or whatever.
Yeah. Have them.
We're talking about female organs. Just don't need, there's just no practical reason for a lizard to have male mammalian organs.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
To distinguish them as a gender. So this is a very interesting, and she fits very well with this whole community where everybody's just slightly different physically and how they display themselves. So this is a very good fit for this character.
I think, you could go with coloration. You could go with plumage, like feathers or
like scale fins and horns. Yeah.
Horns, ridges, scale fins, things. Like there was an example of good literature that I read that actually described this stuff well, was one of the Halo novels that I read. I can't remember which one, but it had a chapter that described I can't remember what they're called, but the little aliens with the shields.
The grunts?
Not the grunts. The ones that had the shields. They were little lizard dudes.
Yeah. The little hunter ones, yeah.
They are a matriarchal society.
Oh, okay.
And it described that they usually come in pairs, in groups of 3, where you have like a larger one and then 2 smaller ones. The smaller ones were males, and they were her males. They belonged to her. And it described the physical differences were like things like her skin was redder and she had plumage and like, markings that were specific to her female physiology.
That's really cool.
It was very well written and neat just to have that information sort of presented and then also sort of wrapped in with the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, so that's
they either came in pairs or in groups of 3.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, and I remember that And it is nice. So when you play this character, if you use her, and as we go on, we'll have to remember this, that there's a lot of social construction and I guess you would say morality and not necessarily are presented and projected morality and a way of looking at the world that this character she doesn't do it. No, she's like, nah, this is ridiculous. Why would you do that? I don't need pants. I have skills. I don't need armor. I have my dexterity and I have my skills. Like, why would I ever need that? What do you mean I have to dress up for this ball? How am I going to get a tail through that dress? Like, come on. Like, I can't move in it. So, yeah. So always have that in mind. But that brings us to the end of this episode. And we thank you so very much for listening to our podcast. If you don't mind, on whichever platform you are listening to, please leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family. And it really helps. Please also leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. And you can write to us too on our social media platforms. You can find me at most places at Raging Cajun Studio, or you can search for the Town of Orphaned Characters in the search bar.
And you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram as Jonicus with a 0 instead of an O. And you might, if you're coming from Reddit, you may have already seen me posting there. So look for us on Reddit as well.
Yeah, and if you really want to help support us, we do have a Patreon. It's slowly growing and adding content onto it. You get to listen to our podcast early. We'll start calling out patrons at the beginning of shows, and it will help just us be able to make more content better and more regularly for you. So
absolutely.
Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful time. And don't forget, your enemy's fingers are finger food. There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue jeans.